Hey there everyone, Russ Hamilton here. Got a video for you, just wanted to get this out there. This one, as you can see, is your lack of empathy makes you unsafe. So we're going to talk about this subject. This is not Corrections 101. This is something more advanced, but this is something that I really want you to pick up on because this factor actually is the root cause of a lot of complacency out there. And if you guys have heard me say it before, complacency is situational awareness perceived but not achieved. So this is going to illustrate to you why that is the case in fact. So let's get right to it. Talk about a couple of principles here. And so the first principle that I want to discuss with you is this one right here. All right, so antisocial personality. This is something that you really need to be aware of if you're in corrections. Almost all of our inmates have this in some form or another that we deal with. And really, so you just have a working understanding of this, is antisocial personality does not mean that they don't like to be around people. That's a common misperception for whatever reason. Antisocial personality literally means that they are against society or they do not follow societal norms. All right. We, on the other hand, we do tend to follow societal norms. We believe in law and order because this is what we do. We believe, in doing those things that are pro-social and that have, true value and intrinsic meaning. So as we look at this and we think about, what kind of things do people that have an antisocial personality do? And the one big thing that this really plays into is this right here. Now, we deal with these antisocial personalities day in and day out. And the one thing that you'll always notice about them, if you have a chance to talk to them or listen to them or watch them, is that they are not, I repeat, not risk averse, right? Like we are. We try and preserve our lives, preserve our values, preserve the things that mean a lot to us, and they simply don't. I had a female last week describe to me how she had been doing heroin, but she wanted more of a thrill, and so she just slammed fentanyl for the first time ever without regards toward, worrying about it. Ended up they had to shock her back to life and so forth. But those are the kind of risks that antisocial personalities tend to take. There's also a lot of other types of risk that they tend to take, and those risks often involve hurting other people. So when I think about the things that happen in correctional settings, for instance, the things that we go through, the things that we see on YouTube out there, a lot of the breakdowns that I sometimes do on some of these videos and things, those are risks that can really severely impact us. So just in thinking about some of those things that you've seen before, you or I, we would never get locked in a van and have, restraints on and find a way to break open those restraints. And then when the officer opens the van, we jump out and attack him, potentially, killing someone, trying to escape. We don't make a habit of, simply going, after other people because we've been told to by some shot caller that we're going to stab them to death. We don't flee from law enforcement, and during that flight, we have a gun with us, and so we decide that we're going to, pull over and have a shootout with the cops. We wouldn't do that because we're this. We are risk averse, right? That means that we are not antisocial personality types. It means that we have some semblance for law and order, that we are pro-social in our outlook. Inmates, by and large, are not. And that's why I get back to the whole thing about empathy, right? So empathy is that ability to take and put yourself into the shoes, into the position, into the perspective of a particular inmate, what it is that they're going through. And we often talk about that empathy in light of, what they're facing with regards to being locked up, being away from their family, having to serve a long sentence, and those things that tend to be that thing that's a little bit more pro-social. But oftentimes we don't link what empathy can also mean with that antisocial viewpoint of theirs, which is where they are not risk averse, right? With those things where they go against society, where that thing that they don't have a compunction against breaking the law or putting themselves into a risky position where they could get caught, they could lose their freedom. All of these things are things that they gamble on time and time again. And so when I bring these things forward, I want you to be able to use critical thinking skills, because critical thinking skills can actually put you into their position and make you realize how pro-risk they are and how risk averse they are not. When you're able to do that, you're able to see potential pitfalls in the way that you're treating them, in the way you're escorting them, in the things that you do. I mean, just a typical, sucker punch from an inmate. We see that, on YouTube all the time. I've experienced it a couple times in my career. Maybe you've experienced or seen it or known someone, a fellow officer, a fellow sergeant, whatever. So those things right there should put you in the mindset where you can start thinking about the position that you're in. And I don't mean that as far as an officer or whatever shift you're working, whatever particular job that you're doing that day. I mean your positioning with the inmates. You know what? Make sure you keep that tactical distancing, that tactical gap between you. Think about all the time that you're putting yourself in a potential situation where you have a disadvantage because of the position that you're taking up at that moment in time. Start thinking about those things that can happen, that can go horribly wrong. I mean, just get on YouTube sometime and search inmate sally port and see how many bad things happen where they're trying to escape by using that sally port. How, officers and deputies have been killed or maimed in that situation. Or out at court, how they decided that they were going to, rush up and try and hit or stab the judge because they brought a shank along with them. After you do enough of this, you start to understand and you start to realize that if you're able to actually pull off that empathy, where you're actually able to get an idea about how much risk that they're actually willing to accept and how little risk we tend to be willing to accept in our own personal lives, you start to see and be able to think and be able to put yourself in a position to thwart this kind of stuff. So I got one more word I'm going to share with you. Get rid of some of this stuff right here. And this is a word that I hope is going to be able to make things a little more concrete for you. Some of this stuff, it takes a little bit of, getting used to and, trying to think it through. But I think this one will kind of cement what I mean here. All right. So that's projection, right? So projection is one of those things that also puts us in a position where we're not able to actually see what's going on. And what I mean by that is we take and we look at these inmates, whether collectively or singly, in a manner where we start to think about our own moral values, and we tend to project them onto them in a way because we think that they think the same way that we do. And that's simply not the case when we start talking about this whole antisocial personality. So when I say projection, it means that you're blotting out reality. It means that you are literally not thinking about the way that they think. Usually when people say projection, it's about, how you put the negative parts of yourself on other people and you suspect them of doing what you do. This is where you have to kind of turn that around in order to understand how you're blocking yourself from being able to see what these inmates do. And I know that, some people, they don't want to think the worst of other people. They don't want to think that that inmate just may have had enough that day and, strike out with a sucker punch. They don't want to think about the fact that this inmate may be plotting how to get away. And in order to get away on a particular transport, he's going to kill you in the process. And yet that's what's going on. Because as we look at all of these things that I've talked about here today, it comes back time and time again. Your lack of empathy is making you unsafe. Your inability to see what an inmate might do, will probably do if they have any chance at all of getting away with it, or even if they don't, because they're not risk averse, right? Those things are the things that, I just have to, hammer time and time again. Go into these units, go into these yards, into these facilities, and just check yourself. Put yourself in their mindset, and don't for a second project what your values are. Just because you would never walk up and stab somebody, just because you would never go up and sucker punch somebody, just because you would never, go for a weapon on a deputy's belt and pull it out and shoot them in the head, doesn't mean that they won't. And it doesn't even mean that they won't for a good reason, because sometimes, it's just because they're experiencing, that momentary within the range of the moment thing where they think that there's half a chance and they're not risk averse. So I'm going to leave you with that. I want you to think on it. Let's be safe out there. That's it. Most of all, I hope you got something out of this talk. I hope that you understand that this is, beyond Corrections 101. This is trying to get you guys to really, truly think things through beyond the range of the moment. That's what inmates do, range of the moment. They're not worried about tomorrow. They're only worried about 1 minute from now. That's why you see all these ones out there where the big problem is them chasing that dope. It's because they only care about that high. Anyway, this is Russ Hamilton signing off. All you guys, like I said just a minute ago, stay safe.